guys, welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be going over how to care for your pothos plant. I'm going to be going over everything that you need to know in order for you to have a healthy and happy pothos plant. So first question, what is a pothos? This is it. This is what a pothos is right here. You can see they kind of have these long oblong leaves. Some of them can be very variegated. That just means they have some different coloring on their leaves. Mine right here is mostly just all green, and that's probably the most common, but you can get some really fun ones that have some fun variegation on them. They come in all sizes, and in my opinion, they're probably one of the easiest houseplants to care for. So let's dive right in and how to care for them. First thing, how to water it. You're going to be wanting to water your pothos when the soil is dry. So I'm a huge advocate for not having a sort of watering schedule of doing it every week or every 2 days. I'm an advocate for always touching the soil. So right now, my soil feels kind of moist, a little bit wet. I'm not gonna be watering this guy until I poke the soil and I feel that it's dry. So about every week, I'll check in with it and I'll just touch the soil and I kind of go from there. But that keeps my plant not having to deal with root rot, and that usually happens when you're over watering. And there can be a lot of water sitting in the bottom of your pot, and when that happens, the roots of your plant, they are sitting in that water, and it is just a breeding ground for fungi to take over, and it's called a root rot, and it will usually kill your plant. I have killed a pothos before, and it was due to root rot. So with watering, I highly recommend touching the soil, and when the soil feels dry on those top few inches, go ahead and give it a good watering. Next is fertilizing. So when I fertilize my pothos, I use Jack's all-purpose fertilizer. It's a 20-20-20 mix. That's the nitrogen, phosphorus, and the potassium active ingredient ratios that are in this fertilizer. So this fertilizer will provide your plant with everything it needs to grow healthily. I recommend deciding to fertilize your pothos when you see that is actively growing. That usually happens in those warmer months where you're getting extended hours of sunshine. So usually in spring or summer, I would say aim to fertilize maybe 2 to 3 times a year, kind of depending if it is growing really well, or if it's growing more slowly, you don't need to fertilize it as much. When you're deciding what soil to use for your pothos, I would just recommend using a general potting mix that you can find at any hardware store. You don't need a specific succulent mix or anything like that. It is a tropical plant and will do just fine in potting soil that you can find anywhere. When deciding where to place your pothos in your home, they do prefer bright and direct sunlight, like most houseplants do, right? It will tolerate low light conditions, but it will not grow as quickly and be as healthy if you put it in very low light. Like I said, these are really easy houseplants. They're very tough, but if you give them the sunlight they need, that helps them be healthier, grow more. So you can put it wherever you want, but I do recommend bright and direct sun as the best possible place for it. When it comes to propagation, it is super easy to propagate a pothos, which I am totally here for. So all you need to do is to get a cutting of your pothos that includes a node, which you can see right here. That node is where the roots will be growing from, and you can place this cutting into water, you can place it into soil, whichever you prefer, and roots will start growing from that cutting that you have made. Using a rooting hormone is not really necessary for a pothos. They do really well without it, so that's not something you need to worry about. But in about 2 to 6 weeks, you should start seeing roots from your pothos cutting, and you can make many pothos plants from propagating it with those cuttings. As far as keeping your pothos nice and looking good, I recommend using some sort of leaf shine. If you don't want to use a product like this, you definitely don't have to, but Pothos will do well with this. You can simply get a cloth and you can just wipe its leaves. That will do great. There's no need to really use a product, but dust and grease and other things can gather on leaves, so it is recommended to wipe it down maybe once a month, maybe once every other month, something like that, just to keep it in tip-top shape. You also might be wondering if a pothos is toxic to animals, and the answer is yes. It contains a lot of calcium oxalates, and that can make children, dogs, cats vomit or have some sort of irritation if they eat it. It will not kill them, but it can make their stomach very upset. So if you do have a cat, dog, child, just make sure it's in a place where they won't be tempted to bother it or bite it or play with it or anything like that. Pothos don't get a whole lot of pests, but if you do happen to deal with them, my go-to remedy is usually neem oil. You can use something like this. I'll put a link down below. But neem oil is just an all-natural way to get rid of quite a few pests, aphids, spider mites, whiteflies, anything like that. I would say pothos, like most other houseplants, could get fungus gnats, and usually that's caused from the soil being too wet. If that's the case, just make sure you aren't watering your plant too much and letting that soil dry out. That will kill the eggs of fungus gnats and get those gone. And last thing, real quick, just some quick troubleshooting questions. So if you notice you have any leaves that have brown tips, could indicate that it's not being fertilized enough. It could be an indicator of a heat draft or that you are underwatering. I would say usually it's from underwatering or from some sort of heat draft. I would say trying to fertilize it more could be problematic. It could cause fertilizer burn and kill your plant. So first thing I would go to is perhaps you are underwatering your pothos if it has brown tips. If it has yellow leaves, that could be an indication that it has root rot, or it could indicate that it's too dry. When I killed my pothos from root rot, leaves definitely started to go yellow. It tended to be these older leaves at the top that went yellow first, and then slowly it just kind of took over. So if that's the case, make sure there's no water sitting down in your pot, and make sure that you aren't watering it too much, and that should solve the problem. And if you are dealing with pale leaves, that could be from harsh sunlight, lack of water, or having low temperatures. So just make sure that it is not getting heat drafts or cold drafts. Make sure that it's getting enough water, not too much. Like we said, that can cause problems on its own. Also making sure that it's not getting too much sunlight, as that can hurt the plant as well. And that is it. That is how you take care of your pothos. I hope this was helpful. If you haven't already, I would really appreciate you subscribing to my channel. I'm always coming out with content with tips, tricks to help houseplant owners like yourself have happy and healthy houseplants.